Test 1 2 1 2. Boom. We are live all over the planet on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube here with the TryPod Live Round 21 NRL preview show where we're going to break down all 8 games for you guys. We'll hand out some best bets and hopefully win you guys a bit of money. The man who has done just that for the past 9 seasons in a row is the big man upstairs, right above me, Jacob Wynn. G'day, my brother. How are you?
I'm okay. Thanks, mate. I'm not that big, and this year has not gone to plan, but the last month has actually been really good. We've clawed back and we've done well on all fronts, including, same game multis 2 in a row last couple of weeks. So 850 we hit last week. That was a highlight. Winning the mixed matchup by over 30 points was great. We've won, I think, at least 3 in a row there as well. 2 and 1 was the best bets, and I was salty. My one loss and Wyatt should have won, but that's what the recap show is for more so. I've got 4 best bets, I will tell you now, to share for tonight. Mixed matchup, you got to wait till tomorrow. But I've got an Olympics multi, and I don't know if everyone realizes this. The Olympics kick off tomorrow with a bit of rugby sevens and football. So I, of course, cooked a multi for those who remember the TryPod Tokyo Golden multi that I'll share at the end of the show too.
Mate, I love it. Without further ado, Steady Aim Pro, Sleight of Hand Pro, Modern Warfare 2, straight down the red dot site, mate, with the ACR. What have you got for us this week in the way of best bets?
Okay, my best bets. I'm going to begin with what might seem obvious, but let's just take it before it goes any further. Melbourne Storm to win both halves against the Parramatta Eels at $1.80 on 365. The line keeps it going out and out. We played the similar thing when the Storm were about a 15-point favourite against Canberra, and we won even though the Storm didn't cover that full line. I just think Melbourne have got so many players playing career years or close to it. Parramatta's not a terrible list, but suffering the loss of Moses, there's no belief, there's not much to play for. So even though Parra's at home here and has given Melbourne trouble in the past, I actually think that's all the more reason why Melbourne won't overlook Parramatta. It's so obvious to say they're going in opposite directions. It's first versus equal last, but I'm just going to keep playing Melbourne. It's worked out for me this month. I'm going to play Brisbane on Saturday, hosting the Bulldogs. The team total over 26.5 points at $1.87 on Ladbrokes and Neds. And to me, it's Brisbane trying to avoid 5 or 6, depending on how you look at it. I'll explain later. Straight losses at home. And although the Dogs have definitely had a better season, the Dogs come off a tough loss. The Dogs will be due a dip in form. Brisbane has all the firepower back in a day game, which is unusual. So I think the crowd will be up for it. The conditions should suit Brisbane. And with Reynolds back, not only the goal kicking, but the way he makes everyone else better, I like Brisbane's chances to score over 26.5. Later, Saturday night, I'm going to play Cowboys Sharks, either team 1 to 12, $1.80 on 365. Cronulla's off the bye and kind of rejuvenated their season with a big win over West. Cowboys much needed and all important victory at home last week. I think Cowboys are a little bit better, but I think this game could easily go all the way down to the final minute, just like the previous Cowboys home game. So I almost feel like 365 is generous with this 1 to 12 pricing on games with really low lines. I'm going to have a crack at it. And finally on Sunday, I'm going to play the Dragons under 18.5. That's their team total at $1.82. Lads and Neds, the Dragons face a near full strength Panthers after already having defeated Penrith earlier this year. Can't see that possibly happening again. I think with majority of the stars back on deck, the Penrith will want to set the tone defensively, especially after conceding more than they would have liked against the Finns. And I just think Penrith overpowers the Dragons on Sunday. So that's my 4 best bets.
It's interesting, man, when we have combined or we have aligned rather on our best bets recently or thoughts on games, we have done very, very well. We flex that premiership muscle, but I'm actually seeing 3 of those games different to you. So it's going to be a very interesting breakdown from us as we get game to game. And I'm actually really looking forward to it, something a little bit different. Let's break it all down. We'll get to it, all 8 games. Before we do so, let's pause for one moment and hear from the very good-looking CEO of Top Sport, Mr. Tristan Merlehan.
G'day everyone, it's Tristan here from Top Sport, and we're finally through the Origin period. It was a cracking game, as we've already spoken about, but at least now we get to the team list, which are going to have a bit more stability than what we've seen in recent weeks. So there hasn't been a stack of moves. Probably the biggest move has seen the Broncos go from 7.5 out to 9.5. Obviously, Cobbo back into that side. The Cowboys have shifted from 1.5 out to 2.5 as well. And probably the other one that has moved in a decent direction is early in the week, the Storm have gone over that key number of 16, 15.5 out to 16.5. So we probably get to that point of the season where you just have to monitor some of those sides that do maybe drop out of contention, and will the line shift out significantly, particularly when there's going to be a lot of teams fighting for those final spots in the 8. So good luck if you're having a bet over the weekend, and of course gamble responsibly.
Great stuff from Tristan as always. Love that tweed seagull shirt he had on there, the mighty Gold Coast Titans feeder club winnie. Let's jump straight into it, mate. Game 1 kicks off with the Warriors v Tigers. Friday, 6 p.m. We're in Auckland. The line was at minus 12.5 against the Warriors. It's now moved to 13.5, so past that classic 13-plus margin there for them. They've got Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at fullback. Graham Talfa comes in at centre, and Edward Cossey comes on the wing for them. For the Tigers, there with that Adam Dwayhe and Aiden Caesar, Api Coruscant and Stafford Toa do return, and Latu Fayanu is the new halfback for their side. When I look at this one, Winnie, it is as simple as anything to tip in the head-to-head market. Wests have lost their last 6 in a row to the Warriors, and they've not won in New Zealand for over 6 years. Do you see this game as simple as that?
It should be. It's a tough one because the Tigers are a nothing-to-lose team. Wests want to avoid 3 straight wooden spoons desperately, for sure. But my point is, there's no point dying wondering. Tigers shouldn't play timid, and the style of the team that they've got is one that should play some positive footy, and that style worked and gave them a chance against the Bunnies. They were in that game with a good shot to win and a lead with 20 to go before the mistakes and the sin bin hurt a lot at the end, including hurting me with my only best bet loser there. You get Appy back in to steer the ship, and of course that helps the attack too. You know what? I could only play West in this game. I know there's a couple of important guys out, and Dewey will be a big out, but Stafford Toa is a very handy inclusion into the back line. Was having a really good year before he went out earlier this season. And I'm looking at the likes of Appy and Galvin, Buller, that can cause problems for a Warriors side that is spread a bit thin in the back line now with the players who are out. You'd say Caesar being out for West takes something away, but it's exciting having Latu, that is, given a chance to start at halfback. I rate his brother Sam Weller, and Sione scored off the bench last week. It's exciting for them to see what they're made of and to all play together. And even on the New Zealand back line, of course, it's cool to have RTS at fullback, but Ruteni Zelezniak hasn't had his best year either. So the Warriors don't really frighten me. And at some point, I think New Zealand could actually crack and really disappoint in a couple of games, because these narrow defeats in the Warriors' most recent matches have just about put the nails in the coffin for this season. However, you could also read it as New Zealand coming back home, playing a soft opponent. I would say the Tigers are soft. No disrespect, but I mean, it is disrespectful to say that, but the Tigers haven't earned any respect this year, to be fair. I could see New Zealand turning it on, and the line reflects that. So I'll leave it alone as a lean to West. Once again, you could play the plus 13.5, or you could play Tigers team total over 16.5, which, that's the type of bet that would have won last week, playing the Tigers team total over rather than the line, if you don't trust their defense, but you think there's a few points in them perhaps.
I think there should be points in them, mate. They lose a bit of ball playing ability with Adam Dwayhe, but Toa is more of a running centre. And then Latu Fayanu and Lachlan Galvin halves combination is just so exciting, because it's 2 guys that truly will try anything. And their coach, Benji Marshall, used to try anything. So I did originally look at the guys here, mate, but I think it could be a little bit of a trap line, right? The Warriors aren't as high on the ladder as the Storm, and they're the home team. And then we go to the Eels game, which is the next one. And these opened with a difference of 3 points in the line. So I do think there could be a little bit of a trap here on the Tigers plus margin. So I went and had a closer look at this game, and Look, simple head-to-head. I'm tipping Warriors. I don't think there's any surprise there, but they are tough to get a read on when it comes to the line here because on one hand, they've had some brilliant wins and some gutsy performances over some tough sides. They almost beat the Storm. They did beat the Panthers at Magic Round. But then you look at their record against bottom 8 sides, and they've actually lost 5 of their last 6 against bottom competition. So that's certainly a trend of complacency right there. Now you go to the Tigers. You look at them last week, it was a similar line around this same mark as well. They were doing really well against the Bunnies, and bang, sin bin lets you down. And so I wanted to have a look there, and I thought, I could still play the Tigers here, but is there any trend in the sin bins here? It felt like there had been. Now, I can tell you, in their past 5 games, they've had at least 1 sin bin in all of those, and they've had 6. So they're averaging more than 1 sin bin per game in their last 5. And I simply thought that had to be unsustainable. And I still wanted to play Tigers, Winnie. So I said, well, let me look at their whole season. Am I just capturing 5 games here and picking something in the trends? No, they've been sin bin 15 times this year, which means they've only played 18 games. So they're on data. There is an 83.3% chance they're going to get someone sin binned here. And I just can't back them because every time they're in the game and they get this sin bin, the wheels fall off. So I went to the Warriors. Look, I know they've been complacent against bottom 8 sides, but they are very down the ladder as it currently is. They must win this game and they must win well. So I think that should mitigate the complacency that they have had against bottom sides so far this year. Therefore, I will tip the Warriors to win. I think they can win 13 plus, but I wouldn't tip that as a best bet winning. I think this is a game you're better off to stay off and something strange could happen. Who knows what to expect.
Can I just nitpick your stat there? Because you mentioned number of sin bins versus number of games played, but don't forget some of those games had multiple sin bins. So it wouldn't be quite correct to say they've had a sin bin in 83% of games, but I tell you what, I swear they've had a sin bin in 100% of games when I've been on the Tigers, which I won't be here, though. That was my lean. And let's dive into what you just said there about comparing the 2 games that are both on Friday. And basically what you said is, let's call Tigers and the Eels equivalent teams because they're level on wins, right? And you're like, so if we've got the 2 equal bottom sides, why do we have New Zealand 13-point favourites and Melbourne 16-point favourites when Melbourne's way better than New Zealand? And I agree with you. I should make it clear, New Zealand's at home, so give them 3.5 for home field. Melbourne's away, so take away a couple of points because Para's home. So there's 6 points there. So actually, these lines aren't really 3 points different if you convert it to a neutral. They're more like 9 points different. But to be fair, Melbourne would beat New Zealand this weekend by double digits. I'm pretty confident to say. So I'm with you. That's why I lean the underdog in this one and the favourite in the next.
Yeah, either way, Friday night is going to be interesting. This next game here is the Eels v Storm. It's at Friday, 8 p.m. at CommBank, and the line was set at minus 15.5 against Melbourne. That's now moved as low as minus 17.5, or as high, rather, against a Melbourne there. Now, Cameron Munster is a chance. He's named on the extended bench, and their front row does get beefed up with Naz and Christian Welch, both named on the bench. For the Eels, they've got Joey Lussick and Makahesi Makatoa joining their bench. And this is an interesting one, Winnie, because we have first versus last. Eels are without their best player in Mitchell Moses, and the Storm might gain their best player in Cameron Munster. Now, no one sees a world here where the Eels can pull off an upset, but I can tell you the team that broke the Melbourne Storm's 19-game winning streak a few seasons ago was indeed the Melbourne Storm, and I believe it was at this venue as well. So stranger things have happened, mate, but how do you see this one playing out?
Well, Para's coming off a bye and still managed to suffer the worst loss of anyone in the comp. You lose your best player in Moses, wiped out for the year, and that's just brutal. I mean, the Eels only had 1 player in the whole Origin series, and he's the only player in the whole series that got a season-ending injury. Doesn't that just sum up the Eels' year? I look at the 1-17 for Parramatta. It's not terrible, but they just don't have the juice this year. And Melbourne, on the other hand, is a team that absolutely believes they can give the premiership a shake. Why wouldn't they? After putting the Roosters in their place on Saturday without all of their very best players. So Nelson, Welsh, they're probably bigger names than they are contributors, but still it's experience that comes in on the bench. Remus Smith, a chance to return, and as you said, at Munster. And I think just Munster in the reserves has a little bit to do with pushing this line a bit further, but I also think the Sharps, and people who look at these games, analytically and trying to find an edge, have no reason to play para, have no confidence in para, and the public will clearly be all on Melbourne. So I think everybody's on Melbourne in this game, and the bookies basically can't make this line high enough. And, it was 15.5 in places. Now you're saying it's 17.5. I mean, it was also 16.5 when I was looking just before the pod, but it's one of those ones I'm not going to be surprised at all if it's closer to 20 when it kicks off, and then you're not going to be able to play team to win both halves at $1.80 either. So I don't love being on the team everyone's on, but I feel like we're backing it on a Tuesday, and we're not. It's got further to go. So I don't see this being close at all. You referenced that para has had a decent record in recent seasons against the Storm. It has surprised the Storm. If anything, when I'm playing a big favourite, what I don't want is the favourite overlooking the opponent. That shouldn't happen given the recent history between these sides. I've done well playing Melbourne, as obvious as they are. We took them the Raiders game, took them last week. And the one game I didn't play them was against the Tigers, where a backdoor try potentially burned some punters. I know it did burn yourself there, Clarky. And other than that, Melbourne's been pretty ruthless recently. So it feels very obvious, but let's not overthink this one.
I agree with you. I can't see any factors that bring this line back in the Eels' favour. I can only see it going more and more against the Storm as we get closer to kickoff, and especially if we get the news that Cameron Munster will return in this game. Even if he was to play something like 40 minutes, you still have a very capable utility in Tyron Wishart there that would finish off the contest there. I looked to the Eels straight away because it's obviously a huge line, and I wanted to see if there was anything I could see. It's Clint Gutherson's 200th NRL game. Outside of that, I literally couldn't find any other reasons to tip the Eels here or any reason to believe there will be an upset here. You go to the Storm's last 5, they're all wins. You go to the Eels' last 5, they are all losses. These sides met at Magic Round, and the Storm won 48 points to 16. It was not close then. Mitchell Moses was also out for that game. And the Melbourne Storm do a lot of homework, more than other sides. So I could even see a world where the Eels are restricted to less than 16 points this time around. They met in 2023. Storm won that 46 points to 16 comfortably enough. And the Storm completed a higher percentage. They've got a better defensive efficiency than the Eels. They score 7 more points per game, and they can see 10 less points per game on average. 17 points between these sides this year on average. So my tip here is Melbourne 13 plus. I don't think there's any reason to overthink this one.
And when people look at the lineups, they see Tues having a career year. Pappy's been back and doing very well. Farlongo, we haven't even mentioned off the bench. Grant was having an outstanding year before the sternum injury, but was good again on the weekend. But what people aren't even looking at is Josh King, Sean Bloor, Eli Katoa, Trent Liero. These are all young forwards who are improving every week, and I think all having the best year of their career so far. And that's where we thought there might have been a weakness. It was the Melbourne pack, if there was holes to pick at this year as to why they may not have premiership credentials. But these players, Melbourne always gets the best out of them, don't they? And proven us wrong, and that's why they sit top of the comp by a clear 4 points.
Mate, you could sign for the Melbourne Storm and be a smoky for the Dally M. That's how much Craig Bellamy gets out of his players. Forget Farlongo, Winnie coming off the bench. Bit of impact there, mate. We absolutely love it. And don't forget, Friday Night Footy also means an exclusive Better Same Game multi crafted by Winnie himself. Better also provides further NRL talk and tips in the Fox Sports Lab, which you can check out on their YouTube channel each Wednesday. And always importantly, think, is this a bet you really want to place? For confidential advice, call the number or visit the website in the show description. Winnie, Game 3, Broncos v Bulldogs, Saturday, 3 p.m. We're at Suncorp Stadium. Line was set at -8.5 against the Broncos. That's moved to -9.5. They have named Selwyn Cobbo to return on the wing. Kobe Hetherington goes to back row, and Brendan Piakura is out. For the Doggies, just the one change. Hopoi joins their bench there. Now, the Broncos have won their last 5 in a row over the Bulldogs, and they did snap their massive losing streak last round against the Knights away. They return home this week. Market sees them as solid favourites, and you agree with that with a best bet on this game for the Bronx.
That's right. It's a huge game, as they all are at this point for Brisbane, because the losses really have piled up. But back to being favourites to make the top 8, Brisbane are, after it was actually more likely they'd miss, but you get that win in kind of what the bookie saw as a 50-50 down in Newcastle. Now Brisbane playing at home in this rare 3 p.m. Saturday time slot, which I feel like the fans love. They can bring, families. It's very family friendly, and daytime conditions this time of year, it's just going to suit Brisbane down to the ground in the way that they like to play. And it's probably not a great spot for the Dogs after having the game almost won. And I talked about it on the recap. You get that put down, or you prevent a 50-meter breakaway try, and you get a really hard-fought victory in North Queensland. It wasn't to be. I think this line, as you say, getting towards 10, will alarm some people. And the general public or your general punters are going to say that the Dogs have been a lot more friendly this year. And on body of work, the Canterbury's had a way better season than Brisbane. But I knew going into this, I could only play the Broncos. Now, I referenced the home losing streak. So get this. If you don't count 13-12 over Manly, which for one, Brisbane only just won that game, easily could have lost, and Manly wasn't going too well in round 10. If you don't count 13-12 win over Manly because it was Magic Round, so not technically a home game, that means Brisbane has lost 5 in a row at home. But if you say, well, that's stupid, it was at Suncorp, okay, fine, Brisbane still lost 4 in a row at home. Can you really imagine that continuing? I can't, whether you're going to call it a 5th or a 6th loss. I don't see it happening. And I do see Canterbury due a dip in form at some point. Reece Walsh was back to his brilliant best on Saturday. Reynolds included in the team. And it's not just what those players do, it's how much things open up for those around them. Cobbo back on a wing is an interesting one. I mean, you're not happy to read that if you've got Mariner for top try scorer. The bloke is leading the comp in tries and gets moved off the wing, but it actually makes a fair bit of sense because Mariner's not reliable under the high ball. Cobbo would be a lot safer there. Mariner's an electric outside back that can do damage at centre. And if you do have him for top try scorer, you're not out of it either because he can score from centre, that's for sure. I am playing Broncos over 26.5, which I will acknowledge the danger that I am playing a Canterbury opponent over, which has not been profitable this year. Canterbury's defence has been outstanding all season long. But again, with the firepower Brisbane possess, I could see Canterbury cracking in this one.
Yeah, I know Ryan Whitaker from YouTube as well. He's always in the recap show saying he's cashed on the unders for the Bulldogs. And looking at the comments here, it looks like he's done the same again here. I'm actually seeing this one a little bit different to you guys, though. I'm looking at a Bulldogs side that have been really competitive, whether they've won or lost this year. A lot of the times they have competed really well. You go back to round 13. The Bulldogs beat the Knights 32 points to 2. And that's a side that the Broncos just beat in the Knights there as well. So that's a mutual win there. But both of those wins also occurred at McDonald Jones. But from that point, the Bulldogs only have one game that has been decided by a margin greater than 4. That was their loss to the Roosters, who we know are a very good side against bottom 8 teams. Every other game they've been in, which includes Eels, Bulldogs, Warriors, and Cowboys, has been decided by 4 or less points. And I think that's a solid enough snapshot of competitive games. That's their last 4 there. So a month of footy, they've been in these tussles and tight contests. They did travel to Queensland last round as well, which is probably a good thing. They only just lost, but their record of recent is only 1 win from their last 8 in Queensland. So I think having that experience the week before against the Cowboys there probably will help them here. Their only other game at Suncorp this year was Magic Round. That was a 4-point loss to the Raiders. Now, they were favourites there.
Thanks for reminding me.
You're on them?
Great bet. Great bet. Bulldogs minus 3.5 against Canberra, knowing what we know about both those teams. But I blinked and they were 12-0 down, and then they rolled all the way back, got in front, and still managed to fumble it for me. So...
No, I remember that game too, mate. In the crowd, having a few beers, Magic Round, thought, yep, Doggy's here for sure. Let's pick a try scorer. And I was shocked too when the Raiders got that. But what I'm building there is, there's 2 games in Queensland there where they've been very competitive, and their last 4 games have also been very competitive. As I said, we're going back all the way to round 13 before a game is where it wasn't very competitive there. There is some concern here. Now, of course, the Broncos have lost their last 4 at Suncorp, like you said. But the Bulldogs are only 1 win from 9 in their away games this year. So that is obviously very poor there. So I won't actually tip the Bulldogs to win here, but I think this will be competitive. And I do acknowledge that I'm going against most people here. My notes here say I want Bulldogs at a slightly larger line. I think by game day winning, you might be able to get a plus 10.5 somewhere for the doggies. And if you can, I like it. I like it a lot. I think doggies plus 10.5 is my tip if it gets to that point on game day. If it stays around that 9.5 mark, I'd probably stay off and be a little bit cautious. I do want it landing on a number that makes sense there in a 10. But doggies plus 10.5 is my tip if it moves as much before game day. Alrighty, mate. Game 4 is the Cowboys v Sharks. Saturday, 5:30 p.m. We're up in Townsville. Line was set at -2 against the Cowboys. Moves slightly to 2.5. Jackson Purdue remains at centre, so Valentine Holmes is on the wing. Interesting side note, both of the origin wingers for the Maroons are traditionally centres at Clubland. Since the decided, they've now both come back and are on the wing. For the Sharkies, Liam Eason, I'm not familiar with this guy too much. He debuts at fullback because Will Kennedy is out and Siosifa Talakai is back. All right, Winnie, the Sharks have been really dominant over the Cowboys at late. They have won 11 of the past 12 encounters. Despite this, the market has the Cowboys priced as favourites. And I believe, if I can remember the best bets correctly, you like the Cowboys in this one as well.
Well, you didn't quite remember it correctly because I've gone either team 1 to 12, in fact. And it is funny that you say that, 11 of 12. And I had noted that the Sharks have really good record and have owned the Cowboys. But the game that always comes back to my mind is 2022, first week of the finals, where the Cowboys won in 90 minutes in Cronulla. But based on what you're saying, that's the only win that North Queensland has over the Sharks just about in the 2020s. I know a couple of times these teams have met, and it just happens to have been origin weeks. And a couple of times North Queensland's rested players or they weren't available. And Cronulla's never really had many origin players for the last, close to, probably since the premiership run. And even then, they didn't have a great deal. So Cronulla's probably been fortunate. And it is funny that Cronulla sits higher on the ladder with, no current origin players, while North Queensland have 6, with Taulagi returning this week as well, and the other 5 backed up after Origin 3. The first thing I needed to do, and I want to put it to people in the comments. Speaking of the comments, yes, I will type up the best bets. Tell me, guys, are they coming through clean tonight? I hope so. I can't see it from my end, but I'll put more up on the screen if they are. Okay, what I want to ask you guys in the comments is, who is the better team? If these two teams played on a neutral, and one of them wasn't off a bye, but just these two lineups played each other this weekend in Vegas or whatever, who do you think is better? And I landed on North Queensland. I think with no Hines, and because Kennedy's suspended, I know that the Sharks are kind of the more complete and better overall team, but the Cowboys have more top-end talent. And I said it there, 5 origin players to none. Not to say the Sharks don't have game breakers, but probably not as many, which could be the difference in a tight one. And a tight one is definitely what I expect. It's in North Queensland as well, so no doubt North Queensland should be favoured. But then I will bring the sides closer together with a counteracting factor that a bye helps the Sharks, while the Cowboys had to fight tooth and nail for 80 right until the final minute of round 20 on Sunday night. And what it adds up to for me is that I've got a Cowboys team that not only is massively in the hunt for the 8, but still only got 1 win outside the 4. Cronulla controlling their own top 4 destiny, both getting important wins most recently. That helps the confidence, and I think these sides are going along steady, and I can just see it going down to the wire again on Saturday night. So either team 1 to 12, I feel, it's a strong proposition.
And I do have this being a tight game as well, but I do have a side that I prefer. I want to start with the fullback, Liam Eason, Winnie. 9 games this year at New South Wales Cup level. In one of those games, he was the 18th man, so he didn't get on. He's only lost 1 game. That was to the North Sydney Bears. He's got 9 tries, 5 try assists. He's averaging 7.2 tackle breaks per game. He's got 7 line breaks there, and he's also averaging 150 metres. So really neat stats there for New South Wales Cup level. Let's start with the Cowboys here. Now, really, since that Warriors loss at home, they have rebounded really well in the past 4 weeks. And for the Sharkies, when you look at their last 4, of course, it does read only 1 win there over the Tigers, which was huge and impressive. But, of course, the Tigers are a different kettle of fish, we must say. But then you go to their 3 losses, and it was an average losing margin of 3. And those were all games that they were in. It could have gone their way for one reason or another. It didn't come off. They come in here, rested off a bye. Whereas as you brought up there with the Cowboys going tooth and nail with the Doggies last week, another key thing we've got to consider is all of their players not all, 5 of their key players there were backing up from Origin. So that's even more wear and tear on the body there and even more fatigue coming into this one. And we do look at the Cowboys as a great attacking threat because of all these top-end players and rep stars that they do have. But the Sharks have actually played one less game this year, and they've scored more points. So we don't necessarily look to the Sharkies for their attack, but they're doing better than the Cowboys are. Defensively, they also conceded a converted try less so far this year. So 6 points less than the Cowboys across the 17 games Cowboys have played. Another fun fact, Sharkies are 4 from 4 at Queensland Bank Country Stadium. They're undefeated at this ground. And I do think losing Will Kennedy will really hurt. But in the same sense this year, we have seen the injured star theory play out for the Sharks. So they have stepped up with Nico Hines missing. Most notably was that win in Melbourne there over the Storm at Amy Park. And this guy's stats at fullback Liam Ison does look pretty impressive. I'm not rating the Cowboys as high this year due to their inconsistency. But when a side is inconsistent, you must also note there is a chance they do turn up and bring that A game. So I'm looking to my largest factor here, Winnie, as the fact that their best players did back up after Origin. Therefore, they've got more wear on the body, whereas the Sharkies have had a bye. And I'm going to tip Sharkies at the line here, plus 2.5. But my final note was, I think this will be a tight game. So I've got no issues at all with your 1-12 play. I think that makes just as much sense as my own personal tip.
These Origin players, that series, it is going to take a toll. And the fact that North Queensland has to back them up on Sunday or they don't beat Canterbury. Whereas you look at a Penrith has the same decision to make and rests everyone. And Ivan says, don't even come to the club. Don't even come to the game. Have a complete holiday. We don't want to see you till Wednesday or whatever. It's like that's the luxury that the top sides have. And Penrith still goes on and wins anyway. So no doubt, I think it catches up to North Queensland. But the question is, will it be this week or not? And still being at home, I expect a strong show from the Cows, but I expect a strong show from both teams, really, which makes it a great game for the neutral.
Certainly be a great game to watch. Next game, it's the Roosters v Manly, Saturday, 7:35 p.m. We're at Allianz Stadium in Sydney, and the line is -6.5 against the Roosters, and that's had no change since team list. No changes to the Roosters lineup since their last round loss. For the Manly Sea Eagles, Tommy Talau moves to the wing, Ben Travojevic is the centre, and Corey Waddell is at back row. Of course, Lehigh Hopewadi is out injured. Now, these sides met once this year already, Winnie. That was round 2, so a very different time, and they both returned from Las Vegas. So there was a bit of travel implication involved in there. Manly won on that occasion by 7 points. It's a similar margin this time, except it's priced the other way with the Roosters. So I want to know, how do you see this game?
Well, we get the two bullies meeting up. We'll find out who's the bigger bully. And Roosters are naming the same 17 that were underwhelming in Melbourne. It's a shame to see the Seagulls lose Lehigh Hopewadi, but you've got cover there, shifting Talau to the wing, Burbo to centres. Paseka returned last week. Notably, no Croker and Olakau'atu still suspended, while the Roosters, of course, are still waiting on Joey Manu to return from a serious injury. And you're right. Let's talk about the previous encounter this year where I had a best bet on the Roosters, in fact, and I lost that. And again, the Roosters are clearly the better team than Manly. I don't think that was such a bad bet, but on that day, Manly got the better of the Roosters for sure. Revenge factor, I don't really read a great deal into. I think more so the Roosters, I felt, had the ability to lose a game here or there and still sit in the 4, but not to lose back-to-back. And the Roosters' pride will be hurt a little bit to be really second best all night against the Storm. So it's a dangerous week to come up against the Roosters. As for Manly, they've coasted, but that can be a positive as well. Manly have played, no offense, mate, but lesser opponents who also had bad days. But it's kind of perfect because Manly navigated the Origin period where you thought it could really hurt because top-heavy team, both captains happened to play for them, but, they jagged that extra time win in North Queensland. You get Newcastle the week where 3 of their back lines out. You get the Titans and who aren't at full strength either. And you get these ones at home, and it's been a great way to work Turbo back in with his match fitness and into some great form too. And look, I think it's a huge test for Manly, and they'll have to really be at their best to go close to the Roosters in this one. I could only play the Chooks. If it's under 6, absolutely, I'd be on it. Even at -6.5, which it was everywhere, I still leaned the Roosters. I think they should be too good here. So probably just respecting Manly enough to, for there to be half a chance. It's an interesting one. So I hope that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I'll start with the Roosters because I agree with you. If you can find a -5.5 price somewhere at $1.80 or more, I would tip that for the Roosters here. Really, they've been really good, since that loss to the Cowboys and now this loss to the Melbourne Storm. They've been traveling well this year with their form and are able to put on big scores and big margins. Now, there was, a bit of concern with that loss to Melbourne, but Melbourne are the number 1 side in this competition. They're number 2 defensively or number 3 defensively, and we know they're very good at home as well. So I don't think it's a huge reason to suddenly jump off the ship of the Roosters. Certainly other sides have lost to the Storm, and I've remained as confident on them. Some concerning signs, but nothing too significant for me. Now, the key stats I look for in matchups is all favoured towards the Roosters. They have a higher average points scored. They lower average points conceded. They complete their sets at a higher rate, and they've got a better defensive efficiency system there. They're also really strong at home, Winnie, and I think that's an underrated factor in all of this. They've recorded multiple 30-plus wins at Allianz Stadium this year. Just ask the Dragons. They will tell you all about it. Their only losses at home are to the Cowboys, which was a shocking performance that none of us saw coming, and to the Storm and the Panthers. I think take the Cowboys out of that equation, right? That was an outlier. Really at home this year, they have only lost to the absolute 2 elite sides of this competition. And with respect to Manly, I don't hold them in the same light as the Storm or the Panthers. I don't hold any side in the same light as those two so far this year. Now, the last time Manly actually won at this venue, being the Sydney Football Stadium, this new one wasn't even built. It was 7 years ago. And I'm going to back that trend to continue. My tip here, Winnie, is Roosters at the line, but I really hope that our listeners can find -5.5 somewhere and still above that $1.80 mark that we use for our best bet minimum.
I mean, if I could have found that, it would be a best bet. But let us know if you do find different. I have this sick feeling that when it's 20-4 to the Roosters, at halftime, then there's not much difference between 5.5 and 6.5 at that point, and I might regret just laying the points. I do talk about a good team off a bad loss, which this will classify for the Roosters. So again, it was a reluctant pass, and if you feel a little bit stronger than I, you may just play the Roosters.
Mate, we need to hand you out some wild cards next year where you can tip something that's slightly under that $1.80 mark. Like I'm assuming you couldn't find it because it's $1.75-ish, slightly too low. A couple of wild cards, and then as a wild cards,
I mean that's always the case, and there's no rule that actually stops anybody else backing it. It's just you have to draw the line somewhere for how people judge the show, because we keep our profit loss record, which factors in the odds anyway, but the best bet record doesn't. So that people need to always know. So that's how it is, and that's okay. I can live with it. And it's not like I get every game right anyway. So the ones that I nearly played and I don't, I hope those are the ones I end up being wrong on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, that $1.80 market makes it a true, I suppose, punter v bookie battle, because you are around that 50-50 mark. And if we did otherwise, then, I'd be tipping Manly plus 60 here and feeling pretty confident I'd get the record up, but we wouldn't make much money, would we? Game 6, mate, let's move to Sunday. It's the Dragons v Panthers, 2 p.m. We're in Wollongong. This line was -11.5 against the Panthers. It has come into -10.5. Origin players are back for both sides besides Dylan Edwards, who is injured. And Winnie, the last time these sides met, mate, the Dragons actually produced an almighty upset there with Jesse Marshke playing halfback. He's not even in the side this time. Now, they moved to Wollongong, where they're 3-3 this year undefeated. And they're looking to go 2-0 against the reigning premiers, mate. Do you give them any shot to do as much?
Not really. I feel like there's a few rematches. Obviously, there's a lot of rematches this time of year, but this round there seem to be a few rematches that I'm getting a lot of reminders of best bets that I lost on. And I don't know if I really read the games that wrong, but they certainly the events transpired on that given day. Like, did anyone see coming or can explain why the Dragons beat the Panthers 22-0 in the second half in Penrith? No Origin players, sure, but that also means that the Dragons didn't have the Hunt or Lomax, and these boys are back from Origin duty. St. George had the bye too. So it's a good spot for St. George getting those troops back. Laurie's also rejoins the team that won in Brisbane. They've had a rest. They play very well at home here. But the Panthers are getting back the Origin contingent minus Edwards. Cleary is, well, what more can you say about him at this point? But he's a special, special player. Just appreciate what you're watching. You're watching someone that, like, dare I say it, has the opportunity to go down as the best player we've ever seen. I don't want to call him that yet or start a legacy conversation, but it's possible, right? So let's enjoy it. Not that I enjoyed it a great deal because my best bet was against Penrith last week, but luckily that won easily enough. But I just mean what Cleary could do last week with several superstar teammates out. Now the majority are back. I know there's a reason for the Dragons will play tough, and I think the Dragons certainly want to complete high and limit opportunities they'll give Penrith. And that's why I didn't quite lay this line. It's probably another one. If it's a single-digit line, I think I'll lay it with St. George. In fact, let's look at my best bets a little closer. You know, Brisbane's like a minus 8.5, and I was like, I wonder if there's any 7.5s out there, and there wasn't. So I pivoted to a Broncos team total over. And then, you know, the Storm was minus 15.5. I thought I could lay 15.5. I prefer win both halves. I like Panthers minus 10.5, but I'm like, I would have just loved to get under that 10. So I've gone Dragons team total. So I've kind of gone for a derivative against the standard line, and we'll find out, you know, how that plays out for me. Other people don't have to do that if they just prefer to take a side. But that's how I see this, that Penrith should be in control. There's a little revenge element there that the Dragons did serve them up, that surprising loss in an Origin week. But it's, to me, what it is that it's kind of go time now for the Panthers to build towards the finals. And you know that the key to a fourth straight premiership actually is not the attack. It's getting that defense back to that elite level. And that's the combinations that the Panthers will be definitely focusing on and keying in on after you give up 18 first half to the Finns. So I don't think I'm going to feel hugely nervous about playing a Penrith opponent under 18.5 points.
I was really keen on Dragons plus 12.5, and I actually expected the line to keep moving in their favour, but it's done the opposite, which is a little bit upsetting, mate. But I did find a bit of a trend in the Panthers season where in away games, they're just doing enough. So just bear with me. Round 18, they beat the Broncos at Suncorp by 8. They beat the Knights by 8 points in Newcastle. They beat they lost to the Warriors by 2. They beat the Cowboys by 6 points in Townsville. And earlier in the season, they beat the Roosters by 6 points at Allianz. So there's a real trend there where in close games this year, the Panthers just do enough. And they do go down a little bit of a peg, losing someone like Dylan Edwards here. I look at this Dragons group, and although there's no stats to quantify this, I just feel that there will be a ton of talk and belief around their squad, and they will be fired up to try and prove their credentials. And they have an opportunity to go 2-0 over the Penrith Panthers in a single season, which I can't really even remember the last time a team did that. That's how dominant Penrith are. This is a game where the Dragons will really be up for it, in my opinion, and they can treat it almost as if a grand final for them, or at least a finals game, and that sort of intensity, right? Made even better by the fact they're at Wollongong, where they are 3 from 3. My main concern, however, remains with their defense. They're conceding almost 10 more points per game than the Panthers, and they're also scoring slightly less also. It's tough, right? Because when I look at the Panthers, I want to look at how do teams do against, let's say, the Roosters or the Storm, because I view them as elite sides ever. Well, they lost horribly to the Roosters twice, and they haven't versed the Storm yet. So my only measure is that they do struggle against the elite sides. I'm going to slightly disregard their season averages. I know that they concede 10 points more per game than the Panthers, but because I expect them to bring their best footy here, and the fact they are undefeated at Wollongong, the Panthers have also not won at Wollongong in over 10 years, and their overall record at this venue is 2 from 9. all things considered there, Winnie, I actually do like the Dragons, but I want to get that plus 12.5 line just for a bit of buffer. So I feel like it's almost a gamble in itself here if I was to say Dragons plus 10.5. But look, I gave 4 examples before of the Panthers just doing enough in away games at a variety of different venues. I'll back it, man. I'll back Dragons plus 10.5. It's still above what they've been winning by away. So Dragons plus 10.5 will be a tip for me here. I would have liked to have got the 12.5 though, if I'm completely honest.
Can you clarify as well, when you are given tips in some of these games, but they're not your official Clarky's Collect, right?
No.
So you will say,
I'll let you know when it's Clarky's Collect, absolutely.
Yes.
When it's a tip, it means
people have asked in the comments. So it's obviously on its way for the Sunday slate.
It's coming, mate. Don't worry. Clarky's Collect. I actually probably have to change it if I'm honest, mate. It's the and I'll do as much on my phone after because I did have some teams that have moved, so therefore the odds I wrote down would have changed. So I might have to rejig it a little bit. But I guess, guys, terminology for me, if I say it's a tip, it means I'll back it myself. If I say I have a lean, it means if I had to bet, I would, but I don't like it. And if I say no tip, then I'm only backing it if I've had 6 beers at the pub and I'm with my mates. Game 7, Dolphins v Titans, Sunday, 4 p.m. We are at Suncorp Stadium and the line is set at minus 5.5 against the Dolphins. At least it was. It's now out to minus 6.5. No changes to either sides here, Winnie. Worth noting, the Titans have never beat the Dolphins. They're 0-3 against them. The market indicates this should go to 0-4. Do you see it that way as well?
Well, I tend to. I did have a lean to the Dolphins, and I saw 5.5. So I'm wondering what's really made people trigger the Dolphins. Maybe it's just the importance of the game, and we come back to the scene of the record comeback where you and I were there in person, and a highlight for me supporting this Dolphins team, and obviously a low light, sorry to bring up for yourself. But it does go to show that last year, both the encounters were very tight. I mean, the other one went to Golden Point. So if you're catching 5.5 or now you're telling me 6.5s are available on the Titans, there's a fair argument for that. Earlier this season, these sides met and the Titans got an early lead, but then the Dolphins demolished them really or crushed them at Seabus. However, the Titans are playing a lot better than they were when those sides met. I think it was about round 4. It's a shame Brimson has had this injury setback because I'd love to see him on the field. I wonder if there's a way to have Kinney, Brimson, Campbell all on the field at the same time. I haven't minded Campbell at 6 either. And I do think that the Dolphins are really missing Marshall King. But the Hammer, on the other hand, he's basically untouchable at this point. And the Dolphins will look like a pretty complete team that should have gone and beaten Penrith and did well to build a 26-12 lead, but it's brutal that they couldn't get the 2 points there. Hence why this is a must-win for the Dolphins, who, going into the year, of course, the goal is to make the 8 from the position that the Dolphins have been in, and we know they were top 4, a third of the way into the season at this point. I hate to say it, but it will feel like a failure if the Dolphins miss the 8 from this point. In terms of odds, I think the Finns are around $1.70 favourite to make it, to give you some sort of context. But if you drop a game like this, you could be an underdog to get in. So hence the Dolphins should be very much dialed in. As for the Titans, well, they're just kind of playing spoiler at this side. Desi sticks to the same team that was very disappointing against Manly and conceded 38 straight. But what are we going to get out of your boys? I'm not sure. Are you?
Yeah, man, I look at this one and obviously the Titans have never beat the Dolphins, so there has to be some form of motivation in that. But I go to both of their last performances, and for the Dolphins, there was plenty of positives despite it being a loss. Probably can't say the same for the Titans. The wheels really fell off. And I went back and had a look at the Titans season to date, and every time they've had a bad loss, generally it's taken at least 2 to 3 games to get back on track. And that is what concerns me here. It hasn't been that immediate turnaround like we've looked for other sides. You always say you're willing to back a team off a bad performance, but not 2 in a row. For this Titans side, it generally the snapshot of the season says they do play at least 2 bad ones in a row there. I look at the Hammer and Isaiah Katoa. They are playing some great footy. And for that reason, I do think the Dolphins will have too many points in them for this Titans side. That being said, the Titans have been good at Suncorp recently. They've won 3 of their last 4 there. That only loss was a tight one to the Knights at Magic Round. And the Dolphins have conceded 26 points or more in their last 6 games. So I wouldn't rule the Titans out completely. Just going off trends of the season to date, I do prefer the Dolphins slightly, but I don't have an official tip for this one, Winnie, because I just feel when I like the Dolphins, they're at a plus margin and they're underdogs, and I expect them to compete. Whereas when they're favourites here and I need them to win by 6 or more, and they're conceding 26 points or more over their last 6 games, I do feel they're just leaving the door a little bit ajar for the Titans to shock them here. So I won't have any official tip on this one.
Titans have got speed too and will enjoy the Sunday arvo conditions at Suncorp as well. No tip from me on that game, no tip from you, but we do have one from Nicole.
Hey guys, just had a quick look at the try-score markets for round 21. Max Platt, $6.50 on Bet365. I think he's about $4.50 on Toppy. He'll probably be around that $4 or $5 mark on most bookies. They're up against the tight ends. He's been a freak of a try scorer so far in his career. He is playing at hooker and not a lot, but he's just he tried to go from dummy half a couple of weeks ago, and I reckon he'll go again up against the tight ends. It's going to get into that point now where they're obviously losing touch with the top 8. So love Maxi Platt this week. Google Wiki Linktree for all things, including our Discord, our odds comparison tool, and the Punters Preview article, which will roll out tomorrow. So good luck, punt responsibly, and enjoy the weekend of footy. Finally, all 8 games.
Thank you very much to Nicole there for that insight. Ryan Boyle from Facebook asked earlier, can we get a Clarky's Collect try scorer bet? I can tell you, Wiki Linktree, head to their website and use the odds comparison tool for try scorers. Essentially, it'll make sure you're getting the best price for a try, whoever you prefer across this round, Winnie. Game 8 is the Raiders v Rabbitohs, Sunday, 6 p.m. here in Canberra. I've done it again. I've said here in Canberra as if you guys are here in Canberra with me. In Canberra, the line is set at -3.5 against the Raiders, and there is no change there. No change to the Raiders lineup. For the Rabbitohs, Michael Cheekham moves to centre. Jacob Host is at back row, and Richie Kenner is out. Final game of the round, Jack Whiten. He's back at his old stomping ground. Both sides are desperate to keep their seasons alive theoretically. Who have you got in this one and why, Winnie?
That's right. That makes a great way to end round 21 because both these teams looking pretty good. Of course, Souths would wish Murray wasn't suspended at this point in the season. The Latrell injury, unfortunate, but it's still a game Souths can win with the players that are available. Wasn't pretty, but you can't quabble. Is quabble a word? You can't doubt too much the putting 42 on the board against West. Although the defense wasn't there, it looked like an obvious flat spot for Souths. I just think if Souths can get through a couple of these muddling weeks where they're not full strength, then when the big guns return, Souths can give that final shake. But you look at the Raiders, they're actually a dangerous team too. Canberra snapped a 4-game losing streak, jagged the tight win. It comes down to goal kicking. But if you're the beneficiary of another side throwing one away, you'll take it and you will really run with that and have the belief. And Canberra's still absolutely in the hunt. Realistically, it's probably 2 teams that will both ultimately miss the finals. But let's state the obvious and say the loser, their season's over. The winner is going to fight another day. So I definitely agree that Canberra has to be a small favourite here, which is what the line is. Another game I've seen in the comments, like people might like either team 1-12, but to me, there's a higher variance. Not that it wouldn't happen, but there's a higher variance with these inconsistent teams like Souths. I don't know if they really believe deep down that they're going to get to the finals, and if they are, that they're going to win finals games. At some point, South's season could unceremoniously end, and Souths could lose this one 13+. I mean, the Raiders are that kind of team that can have really hot and cold patches in games. So likewise, Canberra could lose 13+. Souths is still, it is Jack Whiten's return, which you can make the case for him as well as for his Canberra teammates that he did somewhat spurn. I don't know if I'm making up words late in the show or if I'm too wired that I'm questioning myself. But is there motivation for the Raiders players to lift and want to get this one over Whiten, or is this like the game that means a lot to him and the Souths players will rally around him? Could kind of see any result in this game. It wouldn't surprise me, but most likely Canberra, that has been able to find a new level with the kicking game of Fogarty and the way that he meshes with Ethan Strange. I see it a quality cap to the night.
I'll tell you what, man, I like the Raiders in this one, and I'm actually really confident. A lot of people that are with the Bunnies here, they bring up the Jack Whiten factor and they say that's their main reason. And fair enough, he is a great player, but that's one motivated player. On the other side, you've got Ricky Stewart, who will fire his troops up, and multiple Raiders players that played with him through so many years. And they know the reason why he left. He publicly said, "I want to win a premiership." So effectively, he said to his mates at the time, "I don't think you're good enough at footy, and I'm going to a club that is good enough to win the premiership." And I think that if the Raiders players don't feel that way, Ricky Stewart, we know he's a mastermind. He will have them feeling that way. Let's go back to round 17. The Rabbitohs come off the bye. From that point, they've beaten the Eels, Tigers, and lost to the Dolphins. In those 3 games they're winning, they are averaging 27 points. And at some points, it almost seems like they're trying to win games with their attack as opposed to their defense. Now, genuinely, if there is one club you do not want to try to win the game with attack against, it is Canberra, in Canberra, on a cold Sunday night when it is going to be dewy, wet, tough conditions. That is not the way you beat the Canberra Raiders, in my opinion. Now, they are undefeated this year at home when Jamal Fogarty plays. They are 4 from 4 there. And I just feel that's because his kicking game allows for a bit more territory, and it allows the Raiders' powerful forward pack to really pressure sides into errors. So I went and had a look. The Rabbitohs this year are averaging 12 errors per game. Many of those were self-imposed. Errors coming out of their own end, and errors that will no doubt put pressure on them there. I do believe the conditions of Canberra at night will be super cold, super wet, super slippery, and I think that number will increase above their season average of 12. Therefore, I'm really confident the Raiders will win here. I was going to do Clarkey's Collectors simple as Raiders -3.5, but I wanted to get a little bit more juice and a little bit more bulk in there, Winnie. So I went and had looked back and built this while you were previewing the last game. And I went to the 4 games that I'm most confident this round. And if you guys remember, the last time we did a multi for Clarky's same game collect, we did cash that as well. So I'm going to start with the Warriors -5.5. As I touched on, I do believe they will be good enough to beat the Tigers by 13 plus. So to bring that back to 6, I feel I'm mitigating a fair bit of risk there. Same for the Melbourne Storm. I'm going to go them by the same margin, Winnie, -5.5. I'm really confident they beat the Eels by 6. Raiders head-to-head, as I just mentioned there. And I'm also going to throw in the Bulldogs +18.5. As I said, they're averaging... The last time they lost by more than 4 points was to the Roosters 4 or 5 weeks ago. I'm giving them an 18-point head start. Now, those legs are all around $1.30 besides the Raiders one, which is $1.62. But on a multi on Top Sport, Winnie, it comes out at $3.92. And although, as we know, the more legs you add to a multi, the more risk you incur, I genuinely am confident on all 4. And all 4, of course, too short to back as a singles play. But I do feel it's round 21 now. I've got a good view on the season. So Clarkey's Collect this week will be that multi-winning, and fingers crossed it can come through and cash.
Type that one up, mate, being a 4-legger. I feel like West, they're just that unpredictable team that, you may get some nervous moments in that one. And, of course, I am on Brisbane as a best bet overs. So I would talk about the danger leg that just because the Dogs have been so consistent and so tough, everybody has a bad day at some point. But hopefully for you, there's still plenty of wiggle room where my best bet can win with the Broncos over 26 points and still not outscoring the Dogs by 19. So type that one up if you can. We'll put it on the screen. My mixed matchup will be coming out tomorrow, it should be. If you want a recap of my 4 best bets, I did go Storm to win both halves, $1.80, 365. Broncos, as I just said, over 26.5 team total, 187 on Ladbrokes and Neds. Cowboys, Sharks, either team 1 to 12, $1.80, 365. Dragons, team total under 18.5, $1.82, Ladbrokes and Neds. And how about I also share with you what I've been working on, my creation for the last day and a half, the TryPod Paris Medal Multi. I have analysed all 350 events that will take place over the next 19 days in Paris. Not exactly, but I have looked closely at the countries, medal tallies, and market. And it's a 4-leg multi, and it starts with Australia. Of course, we're watching the Olympics. That's who anytime Australia's a sniff in any event, it's going to be covered. And we're not going to cheer against the Aussies, right? And they did us right in Tokyo. And we're going Australia over 60.5 medal index. And you're going to ask, what's the medal index? I haven't heard of that before. That's because I made it up. And what it is you get 1 point for every medal, but the golds are worth a bonus point. So 2 points for golds, 1 for silver or bronze. So it's kind of like betting Australia's medal tally, which is set at 47.5, but the double points for the golds. And Australia's predicted to win 13 to 14 golds. So that's where we're getting a 50-50 of 60.5 Australia medal index. So if you're always cheering for the Aussies, but it's worth even more when we do win gold. And that reflects how we feel watching these events. I'm going China over 86.5 medals of any kind. That's being bet up. They have so many athletes in so many of the events. So that's someone you can cheer if you're neutral in an event. Go the other direction. I don't think we mind cheering against the USA. Under 40.5, that's just golds. So under 40.5 golds, that's a market that I'm noticing is being bet down. Any event that's got an American in there that's a chance, you're cheering for every other nation in the world, basically. And finally, let's involve the hosts, France, with their national sports, soccer and rugby. And I'm going to tip that France will win a gold in one of those sports, whether it is soccer or rugby sevens, and that could be men's or women's. They've got a legit shot in all of them. I remind you that the rugby and soccer actually kick off before the opening ceremony, but you can still get on this tonight or in the next couple of days at $13 odds, max 25 stake on Toppy. You'll remember that we went down to the wire in 2021. We got 16 days of excitement in Tokyo. We won 3 out of 4 legs. We lost 1 leg by 1 gold medal with Japan that had twice as many golds as silvers. But it definitely added a great amount of excitement throughout those whole games. So by popular demand, I'm back again with this one. And I'm going to just add one more note. The Rugby Sevens quarterfinals take place before the opening ceremony. So what Toppy's going to do is suspend the market, but then after the Rugby Sevens men's, they'll put this back up. If France gets through to the semis, which I expect they will, it will be a little shorter. If France gets knocked out before the semis, it'll come out a little longer. So I have a feeling some people will just assume they can back this market up until the opening ceremony. And I just want to explain why that gets tricky with the rugby actually starting tomorrow. But that means the excitement begins even earlier than you might have expected.
There we go. And all those bets, that multi, the best bet, everything we've put out will be in the TryPod Facebook group, which you can join if you're here from my page. One more time for us, Winnie, before we get out of here, could you please recap our best bets for round 21?
I did that while you were typing Clarky's Collect, which I'll put up on the screen now. So that means, and again, Clarky's Collect, I'll repeat for you, New Zealand -5.5, Melbourne -5.5, Canberra head-to-head, and Bulldogs plus 18.5, paying $3.92 on Toppy. Clarky is up 9.5 units on Clarky's Collect since we started that about a month ago. And we are shooting for 3 straight same gamers to hit in consecutive weeks as well, off the back of $17. And then people were disappointed. It only was $8.50 when it won last week. So, of course, I'll be in the kitchen whipping those up again. I hope everyone has a fantastic week and enjoy the Olympic Games on top of the footy accent, on top of the footy action. And we will see you Sunday night later than usual because of the night game to recap it all and hopefully stack another winning week. Lego.